I mean, you could just mute.
Okay, so
Funny meme.
Void. First of all, can everyone just keep on push to talk and be quiet? It is starting now. I just want to make sure, Void, we are rolling. Okay, sweet. Let's go. So welcome everyone to the second weekly Bible study, Bible reading. Um, I just want to make sure everyone's on push to talk, and I would really appreciate it if you don't talk while I'm talking. No, kind of sound like a teacher, but whatever. Um, and to only talk when I open the floor for everyone. So obviously we're doing the Bible study because we all want to learn more and understand more about the Bible and share the experience of the Bible with people who don't have it. Um, and so, and that can only help it, especially with some people who are more on the fence about joining the cult, especially with the chapter we're reading now. So there's only benefit with this. So some things that happened this week. There's some people who made some idols that look amazing. Mainly, sadly, Tosker isn't here. Hopefully, I'm saying his name right. Void also made a twig idol, and there is also Evan, who on the forums who 3D printed an idol as well, which all look amazing. Personally, wish I could have made mine out of clay too, but that's neither here or there. Each of them is different, and they all have their own personal flair. I'm so happy to see people actually start to make idols like that. It's really starting to make this place feel more like a proper cult. Um, Fuck. Okay, now it's just pressing W everywhere. No, stop that. Stop that. Stop that. Oh. Okay. Um. So as you know, I'm not sure if all of you know, but March 1st is the beginning of the festival season, which is a season that goes from the 1st all the way to the 22nd. That we celebrate for the reasons I will get into just by reading the page that is on. Here we go. So the festival season. In the Call of Cthulhu, the reason why we have this as an actual thing in the Call of Cthulhu, it was the period for in the Cult of Cthulhu. This was a period of four very symbolical events. Wilcox approached Professor Angel with the bias relief. Cultists this alert cultists of the alert were imperiously summoned to sea. The Emma was thrown south of her course by a heavy storm. Bizarre dreams began across the globe. This period celebrates mostly the first day of March 1st, but is continuously celebrated that occurs throughout the month. It is an excellent time to reread the Bible of Cthulhu and review it, which is exactly what we're doing. So sweet, we're celebrating the festival as we speak. Some gathering suggestions, in person, seaside locations. Stormy days particularly should be used for gatherings. Bias release of the old ones can be made during gatherings. In previously made or purchased bias release of the old ones should be present at gatherings. Solo reverence, rereading the Bible of Cthulhu. So we're already doing a gathering, so it is in the perfect time of the month too. So that makes this even more special. So now let's talk about the part that we're going to be reading and why we're reading it. So we're going to be reading in the right path religions and false idols. There's a particular reason why I chose this, and this because this chapter really helped me personally join the cult. It showed me the ways of how God and the right hand path religions viewed the world, and um, showed just how wrong it is and how it is considered sanity, as we will find out. Um, so this is one of the main chapters that really brought me to the cult. So the chapters are already in the Bible session. So if everyone would read along, that would be preferred. And I am going to apologize in advance for any mispronunciations or me reading wrong. So let's just dive right into it. Right path religions and false idols. Have you heard the call and allowed it to lead you here? If so, then it's very likely there's no need to further discredit the religions of the right-hand path to you. It is trusted that you have awoken from their slumber of their hypnosis, and are familiar with the torchbearers of the truth against them. Among the aptly named Four Horsemen, Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris, and Daniel Dennett, as well as virtually every professional comedian and every great philosopher that has ever lived. Their collective bodies of work expertly demolish every trace of such religion. There is no greater need to further drive the point home here. This passage is obligatory and exists for those who have picked up the Bible and still sitting on the fence. It is not necessarily fiction for those sole purpose to just debate over the right path religions, but rather acts to flesh out the cultist views on the subject and guide those who may still be under the blanket of their rigid control. Editor's note. This is one of my favorite parts. It is intentional that the following word God is attributed with the right path hand religions, the first and foremost Abrahamic gods, is spelled with the untraditional form of lowercase g, rather than the capital. The Abrahamic gods is not deserving of such grammatical honor, as we shall see. Imagine savage Bronze Age tribes, with their religions based on texts written by unknown authors that centuries later would dominate monotheism. From the literal sky god religions, patriarchal and cruel, influence the minds of majority of all people on the planet, and used and abused by the rulers for each significant empire, and obeyed unquestionably by its subjects. Enter the main three Abrahamic gods of religion, enter the three main Abrahamic religions of the history of the human species. There is a major stakeholder, and there are three major stakeholders in the major religions of the present day: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. The oldest and obvious father of the two is Judaism, a federation of desert tribes dedicated to cruel, malicious, self-proclaimed jealous, intimidating bully that is obsessed with sex, or more accurately, the restrictions of therein, and his superiority over any other god. Judaism comes, of course, before the Romans and her conquests, and especially two men, Paul of Tarsus and the Emperor Calistine of Rome, that founded Christianity as a more inclusive offshoot of Judaism. With their eyes to indoctrinate the world. It is spread largely by sword, or especially by Calistine, and his goal is to make it a accessible religion to both his people and new subordinates. He combined it with the key traits of practices of leading pagan religion of the times in order to unify his people under a new banner, and managed to rise it from obscure cult practice to a major religion. Later, a new prophet, Muhammad, had re- reverted back to the original testament and added the ideology of military competence and conquest to extend the faith with another new holy book, the Quran. Today, most of the copies of the Torah, Judaism, the Holy Bible, Christianity, and the Quran, Islam, are sold and most likely never read. If these people were to properly read it, is likely that their followers would fall like ice chunks from melting ice caps. Although, even biased, reading the entire volume reveals aristocrats that are seldom mentioned in the place of worship by so-called shepherds of each religion. No doubt, the majority of respected followers remain woefully and blissfully ignorant. And if these monstrosities are mentioned, it is always with the commands wit, a shark-like swindler disguised in expensive suit with a firm handshake. After all, the worst verses of the scripture are very rarely meant to be taken literally. Don't you know that is purely metaphorical? How fantastic that the story of Lot is where Lot gave his daughters to God's angels to rape, is not true. It's a metaphor. Or the shocking story of Abraham and Isaac and the sacrifice on the mountain is another pretty example amongst a plethora of abysmal acts of the Abrahamic gods. The vast majority, only modern theologies cry heartfelt that the story of Abraham and Isaac is certainly not meant to be taken literally, but simply as a parable, a story of a God unfavoring the Israelites' practice of sacrificing children. We see again, we see doublethink used in the force of God's of con- again we see doublethink in used in force of considering God's ashamed slaughter of children. And the problem here is that the theologians, preachers, and believers get to cherry pick what is literal and what is metaphorical. I ask, on what grounds? I ask, on what grounds? It is a question that has no persuasive answer. We only know we only have we have no way of knowing what the original transcriber of that story meant. And as the story that he documented there is meant to only be taken as parable, as the modern torchbearers claim. And yet Moses splitting the sea or Jesus turning water into wine is real and actual events? How do we know they are not metaphors? And why do you get to decide? At least we forget that a few decades ago, that the story of Abraham and Isaac was not considered parable, but literal, and for far longer supposed metaphor. The story of Adam and Eve, ridiculous on the face of it, was a literal story for centuries until progressive Christians not very long ago decided that evolution sounds actually quite reasonable. Therefore, the story of Eden slips neatly into the metaphorical story of birth and original sin, or whatever lesson you would like to insert here. The Vatican seemingly has a monopoly on what is meant to be real and what is meant to be a lesson. The problem with that is the ability to pick and choose is an assumed as right. The problem is that the ability to pick and choose is assuming as right by each tribe, sect, generation, and individual without allowing one's consciousness to take a step back and look at human history as a whole. These people clearly cannot see the grand oil painting of existence. It is curious that as time goes by and science continues to reach higher and higher tiers, that stories of the Torah, and the Bible and the Quran are actually now that we think about it, purely metaphorical, and seems to increase, and yet in times yonder were taken literally and used to punish, torture, and murder, regardless of whether or modern mm, uh, oof, um, sophisticated believers see these stories as a metaphor or not. They are descendants, not by blood, but by creed, of people who did believe this was literal. They are happily stand arm in arm with people of the past who, fault of, though fault, no fault of their own, believes every single word of the Bible literally, regardless of what we have learned now. At the time that has passed, an overwhelming evidence is given that they still choose to worship a cruel Abrahamic God. An overwhelming majority of these modern believers, too, have views of their God that are so broad that can be abstracted to nearly anything. God is the Alpha and Omega. God is the kindness in our hearts. God is our better nature. God is the natural world around us. The perversions of the world and the original idea itself allows the fathers to believe and uphold often to, to predictably a degree that the faith that the words of the faith is without actually knowing them. That their God is a personal God and their Bibles and are books that they have not read. These believers use whatever justifications in their arguments, but to point out an unsavory part of their book is not a topic open to dispute because of its privileged position within modern society. When society gives such status to a book, it can be used to find any passage to justify any kind of inhuman treatment to any member of the human family, be, because humanity is suspended in servitude of its authority. If one asks, the answer is unbelievably because God says so. Difference again with the cult of Cthulhu is that we know, without a shadow of a doubt, the realism of our stories, who they were written by, and exactly what and why we believe. A common argument with these books provide a moral framework for humanity. And as has already been illustrated, these aristocrats throughout these books provide no moral guidance whatsoever. But let's give the argument the benefit of a doubt and say the core tenets of these religions have indeed give us moral guidance to humanity. As social creatures, the common sense of brothers and sisters is to treat one another with kindness and love. Why bother going to a book that was written by desert dwellers, scribed in 600 to 800 BC, in order to navigate the modern world? Why this book is needed now? Note that cultures, past and present, such as polytheism, aborigines, and dragon, dragon, Dragon Elders, and more (see on Magica), are not text-based cultures at all. Whether religious or not, they have no problem negotiating moral framework. A book is not needed to navigate their moral world. Perhaps these ancient books were needed once, but this is persuasive justification for their current belief in them. It is a reason This is the reason to pretend that we no longer understand what moral is without them. While we're on morality, let's discuss the morality of the subject of these books. What kind of good, benign, loving God allows 9 million children under the age of 5 to die every year? What kind of benevolent, passionate, and caring God creates a parasite whose entire life cycle is centered around boring into children's eyes and eating its way out from the inside? What kind of kind, jovial, and fair God would then condemn these children to eternal torment and torture in a fiery hell for not worshipping Him? Keep in mind, of course, that this God is in His ultimate wisdom using His guiding hand to create these children in the isolation in their isolated cultures without access to the Christian world. and in his omnipotence created their destinies to perish in such a way, and of course be sentenced to such an eternity. How mysterious his works truly are. Uh, it is odd that an omnipotent God would not intervene in such pointless despair. Of course, unless he cannot or will not. If he cannot, then he is in fact not omnipotent. If he will not, then I put to you that he is evil. A grown man has spent his entire life kidnapping, raping, and murdering small children can at the end of his life ask for forgiveness from God and his family and friends, and, and surely get to spend eternity in blissful heaven. Ted Bundy, an infamous murderer and rapist of 30 women, famously found a religion on death row and prayed to the Almighty before he was sentenced to death. If he asked for forgiveness, you can be sure that he was on his way into heaven. How fortunate for him. Why give us a book that has such evil? If God is not bound by moral, then why do we get moral from him? And this hideous faith in absolute perfection is absolute perfection of narcissism. My God has cured me of this and that. He has given me these and those, and has helped me with insert achievement. By all means, let us ignore everything else. This is a this prominent of apathy and forgetfulness is needs of other followers humans is abstinence, but too is considered sanity. We cultists, again, will happily choose madness. Postscript. When we consider ourselves we when one considers the hypocrisy, corruption, etc. of Christianity and most of its followers, certainly its leaders, then it wouldn't be long to imagine um, then it wouldn't be a long shot to imagine that we lived in a multi-universe fragment where the Abrahamic gods somehow did exist. He would prefer the primate descendants of those who did not as believe him at all, as they do not breach his rules nearly as much as the people who claim to worship him. A word on offended evasion. Understanding the psychology of the right path religions it is intrinsic to being a cultist, as it is understanding their methods and major religions that we have been discussing, and a major religion that we have been discussing have a new trick these days. They have been seeming to have a stranglehold on what I will call offended evasion, where nearly anything can be defended on the grounds of my religion's sensitivity. My viewpoints of this topic My viewpoints on this topic is this: do not question or challenge it, as it is my religious belief, and doing so will offend me. Surely, more severely and worryingly, any sexual, ethical, or otherwise controversial issue arises in the current discussion and can be monopolized by being the first to jump in with a religious agenda to those opinions whose given in credence purely on the grounds that this is religious and therefore deserving of some kind of respect. I have I have something to weigh on this new issue, and because I'm a man of God, I know that my source is an ancient textbook, and my opinions is immediately valid. In civilized society of the accepted kind in the 21st century, a good part of the opposition to religious leaders respectfully toe-tip away when challenged, out of some kind of undeserved respect for the faith with no scientific backing. And why is that there's such fear of offending when it comes to why is there such fear of offending when it comes to matters of life, the universe, and everything? In any other area of academic of academic academic mania, if premise is offered, it is not only due but right to challenge it and expected to provide significant empirical evidence of its hypothesis. Back up his hypothesis. But as the same of any religious person, we immediately encroach or infringe on some kind of unspoken agreement, not to tread, not to question, and not to object. At least we should cause some kind of offense. Let it be clear that declaring that you are offended by something is no more than a whine. Doing so in order to win or evade an argument is nothing more than minutes of cowardice. There is no meaningful element behind it, or there is no meaningful element behind it. It is not a counterpoint or a rebuttal, and it does not do nothing to continue or enhance the intelligent conversation. But to declare that you are offended is to respond as a well thought out, articulated question or or consent is no more or less than raising a timid white flag with the word coward announced upon it. To be offended if you must, but counter with reason and logic. Do not let your own personal difficulties to weasel and sly your way out of an argument, the same way that most religious people have always done. Jesus Christ, what a conundrum for the fertile mind. As a child, I once asked a priest, a Father Michael, why the New Testament so blatantly contradicts the Old Testament. Of course, at the time, I was not aware of the concept of double think. Why Jesus said, "Turn the other cheek," while God said, "An eye for an eye." To the priest's credit, a good man at heart, he provided me with the best answer to that question I have ever heard. Is this was his answer. The Old Testament is important for the people living in their time. And the New Testament was important for the people living in their time in order to live better lives than they have been. In those days, killing someone's brothers was responded with killing an entire family, so an eye for an eye was in fact a step up in kindness. Let's fast forward through the years, and Jesus' revolutionary message for the people of his time was turn the other cheek, rather than responding at all. The New Testament was important for the people to live lives better than they had just been, and just as the Old Testament was for the people before them. This answer has always struck me as rather poetic, and is the only favor I will be doing Christianity in this volume. Perhaps there were lessons in these ancient textbooks will serve some vital importance in man once upon a time, but that time is over. Unless a New Testament for today is offered, the premise dies with the Old Testament. The Abrahamic God is forgotten and laid to rest. Perhaps it is time for us to live better lives than the people of the New Testament. Let natural evolution unfold. Now it is time of the old ones. Okay. So some of the reasons why I've preluded before. Some of the reasons why this chapter really affected me is because I was on the fence and I didn't quite understand, just how bad the Abrahamic gods was, how mainly Christianity was, until I read the chapter. Like with the part of, letting 9 million children die under the age of 5. That is cruel and injustice. If he was so powerful, then why doesn't he stop it? And that's like the main thing that really let me see, the way it, led me towards the path of the cult. So, and I'm happy I've been in this place. So now, it is time for you guys to talk. Give your comments on it, and how did it make you guys feel? Anyone is open to discuss anything about this. Don't hesitate to ask.
Um, well, I personally think that the right hand or right path religions are super controversial back then, now, still, in the sense that most of them have done, I guess, horrid acts against pretty much, I guess maybe humanity, you could say, and against a bit of nature, you could say as well. For example, as you said, the killing of thousands of 5-year-old children, and apparently God is so omnipotent and kind that but he just still won't help them is just, to me, it doesn't sound corrupt, but it just doesn't sound benevolent and kind. It just sounds like an excuse for people to, you know, have something to, I guess, maybe stand behind. Don't know if this makes sense. Um,
It, it makes
so
perfect sense to me. That and I agree with you with that. Um, and also I think something else to add on to that is it also gives people a higher standing of making them feel better. Like my God is so great, like he's so kind, so thus I must be, or something along that lines. But
yeah,
you're like right on the money with what you said.
yeah, like nowadays, um, being in a religion, a major religion, um, is pretty much, I guess, a free card of like, for example, getting out of an argument that you're losing. For example, um, I'm offended, so or you've offended me, so my point is automatically valid. Or for example, I don't like you, and you've done better arguments against me, so I will just act the victim because I believe in a religion, I guess you could say, in God, and that automatically makes me in the right. That doesn't make sense in my eyes. Like my Christian friend, like talking about Adam, Eve and stuff. My Christian friend, in school, we have an evolution in biology at the moment, and I always looked at him because he does believe in Adam and Eve, and I said to him, yeah, I said to him, um, I I'm sure you know that, for example, Adam and Eve, if they reproduce and all their offspring reproduce with each other, then that would mean that, for example, negative genetic traits and, for example, genetic weaknesses can be, I guess, strengthened and um, heightened. For example, as you can see, incest
Yeah.
nowadays is faced with a lot of scrutiny and, I guess, disgust, since it can, I guess, destroy the lives of and the reputation of the parents and destroy pretty much the life and well-being of the child. Because, as you all might know, when you do incest and you get a child from incest, that child will pretty much be, I guess, will get all of the negative traits, a negative, I guess you could say, um, what was it called? Negative, not
Genomes?
abilities, genomes, yeah, negative genomes
Okay.
that the siblings will have. So, for example, in Middle Ages, I guess you could say, uh, they wanted to keep, well, back then it was called keeping the bloodline clean, which basically only means family members and family members have
A
sex
lot of
to get a
incest, yeah.
child.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a shit ton of
Yeah.
it. And like one German prince his dad and his grandmother had sex, and then he came out, and his dad was the I think the cause of his mother and his mother and his uh brother, I think. So that basically means like that
Oh,
when they did an autopsy, when they did an autopsy, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it said like that basically his whole figure in and of itself was malformed pretty much. They said that his blood was black, which I don't really believe, but I can believe it a little with so much incest going on back then, and that his
Yeah.
skull was like not in the form of human being, which I can believe as well, since for example, negative genetic traits through incest can lead to mutations, and back to Adam and Eve, I said to him, yeah, negative genetic trait through incest, and he said, yeah. I said, yeah, mutations, negative mutations, and he said, yeah, well, we mutations. That's what he said. That
Hmm.
we exist because of mutations and stuff. And I just think to myself, there aren't any positive. There there aren't a lot of positive mutations in genetics. It's mostly negative. For example, growing a third
Yeah.
arm can maybe inhibit your life
What a
expectancy.
stupid man.
Yeah, and then
And so you are right, Eric. And there's the beneficial mutations are called evolution.
yes.
And thank you for your input. But let's see if anyone else has anything else to talk about. Sorry. So D, you just lit
It's
up.
fine.
You have anything?
Yeah, I feel like the chapter's important for not just for us but for everyone because it causes you to question what you believe, but not only that, it causes you to have to research what you believe because you have to be strong in your belief. Like you read the Christian Bible and it doesn't make any sense because it contradicts itself. That you can be right by answering one question with two completely polar opposite answers. Whereas with what we believe, we have to be strong in our belief, not only because we're a left hand religion, because we're a small cult, but also because it's important for when we're sharing our belief. We have to be right with what we say. We have to be right with our argument. We haven't got the room or the numbers or the power to just get offended and say, well, no, we're right. We've got to be strong in our belief and we have to know what we believe before we spread it.
Once again, really well put. And you are completely right with that. Um, um, I mean, and hopefully, eventually, the cult will grow. It is still slowly growing, and I can't wait until we become more international and we have, thousands of cultists everywhere. Where we will. I know we will never get to the point of weakness that my opinion is right because of this. But it'll be nice to when we have numbers akin to that. Um, Anyone else have anything to add to that? Very well done, Brother D. Void, do you have anything? Sammy, Alyssa, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Anything else? Nabu, Astara?
I would add, but I wasn't very present here for certain reasons, and I do apologize.
That's okay, as long as you're here and you heard some of it. We do have a recording of it, and so for people who can't hear it, you know, can hear it then. Does anyone else have anything to add to that?
Well, back to my endless tirade. It's not going to be endless, but I guess defending your point because you believe in a religion. He said, yeah, I believe, like, are you questioning my belief? I think that's what he said. Are you questioning my belief? And then he automatically went to my belief, which is the cult of Cthulhu. And I just thought to myself, you absolute, uh, you absolute idiot. Why would you believe in some two jungle-dwelling people that would cause a shit ton of incest? Where at the moment, if that were true, Adam and Eve, we would all run around uh, limps, black blood, malformed bones, hypersensitivity to to dust, to wood, to maybe hair and stuff.
Everything.
It's stupid, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just stupid.
Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff wrong with it. But at one point in time, there may have been use for the Bible, but as I said, that time is now gone, and only awakened people like us have heard the call of Cthulhu and have heeded it here. And that's the main reason why I wanted to read this, is so I can get this particular chapter out there, so other people can hear it. Maybe, hopefully, eventually, that one friend of yours might come around, might wake up from the hypnosis of his quote God. But yeah. Does anyone else have
Hopefully,
anything to add?
don't think so.
Yo, I wanted to add on the how they say God is kind and whatnot. So
Do so.
yeah, so like I have since being in a religious school, I hear this a lot over prayers and whatnot, even though I don't believe in it. I hear how they say he's omnipotent, he's kind and caring, but religion class that I'm forced to be in, I hear God flooded the earth to kill however many people just because it didn't go out the way he wanted. So he restarted with 3 people just because it didn't go the way he wanted, and how he killed firstborn children just to let his people go. It's just controversial on how he's saying he's kind and whatnot, even though he's done these evil things like made diseases that kill people and whatnot, and mass murder, whatever he's done, and people go up and say he's kind when it doesn't seem like he's kind at all.
I completely agree with you.
That's really
Wait,
all
so
I have.
by that measure, though, so does that mean that we've gone through mass incest twice? So we started off with Adam and
Yes.
Eve. They've created humanity. God killed humanity, left Noah, his wife presumably, and one of their kids, and then they created humanity again.
But remember,
No
this
wonder the
story is
world is
parable.
ruined.
Yeah. You know, but remember, this could also be parable as well. I mean, it's all up to the Vatican, right? And a monopoly with stuff like that is just also absolutely disgusting as well. This thing seems to be founded on base of incest and not making sense with all the hypocrisy, the doublethink, and the cognitive dissonance. I mean, it all ties in together, and so it's all whole hot mess. And Christianity isn't the only one like that. There are tons of other religions, like the main three though, the Abrahamic gods, like Judaism and the Quran. And also, let's not forget about how being gay is also bad. I mean, they used to stone people for death. Hell, Islam still does stone people to death or push them off buildings just for being gay.
Very discriminatory.
How dare you live happily?
Yeah,
How dare you like what you live like?
Yeah, it's something else, man. It's something else. Let's see. Does anyone else have anything to add?
I could. I also kind of wanted a little bit on like the corruptness of the church and whatnot.
Oh, with like all the pedophiles and stuff with it too.
Don't you get me
So there's
started.
there's pedophiles, and back a while ago, how they forced you to pay money to say, "Oh, you're going to heaven. God loves
Yeah.
you." And what?
Yeah. Something that's really good to watch is Helsing Ultimate Abridged. Is not very, let's say, kosher, but it pokes fun at a lot of the nasty thing that mainly Christianity have done. And sorry for interrupting you, Nobu. If you have anything else to add, please do so. I'll be quiet.
Oh, yeah, I was just like that's mostly about how they're corrupt. They use the power of God and whatnot to do what they want, and that's not right. That's not a good thing to do. To use this so-called God to do what they want on others.
See, this is what I like so much about the cult, is that nobody, not even the inner circle, is beyond scrutiny. You're constantly assessed, your beliefs are constantly assessed, your behaviour is constantly assessed. And if it falls out of line, then you're reprimanded for it. Nobody is above scrutiny within our.
Yeah, that is something really good. And also, let's talk about scientific backing with it. Eric already got into it a little bit already, but we are based off of science. We know what happened about our gods. They exist and yet they don't, due to how theory with quantum mechanics work, where there is granted there is some scientific backing with like how Jesus actually did exist and stuff akin to that, but there is still very minimal. They go based off of belief and not actual fact. Um, which is something also that we do, and that's something great about the cult that we are constantly taking a step back and thinking about things objectively with the scientific method. Something that I personally have been trying harder to do. So does anyone have anything else to add to that?
I do.
Okay, feel free to add.
As me, I lean very heavily towards belief instead of reason, and I'm guilty of that. But I do think reason is always a good thing to keep in the back of your head. Let's be reasonable here. It's always a great saying to have. And Christianity really pains me in the fact that people attempt to make money off of, these stage preachers that say they can heal people through the will of God. I find that kind of disgusting that you could take such desperate people and say you've healed someone's cancer, like a child. You healed a child's cancer by just being overdramatic and pushing them down and saying God has healed you and ridden you of this illness.
Yeah,
Or just like
yeah,
that one
that
woman
is
who had one hand shorter than the other, and then she just put them together.
Yep.
it is disgusting. What
Like,
the
sorry for
right
my
path
language right
religions.
now. Sorry for my language right now, but to be honest, people that claim can heal other people with like the power of God or something is absolute bullshit. I do not believe it in it for a fact. Belief can be a strong thing. With belief, things can happen. But for example, healing someone with the power of, let's say, God is bullshit. Sorry.
You see, this is
I,
what our Bible preaches. It states that anybody who claims to know God is either a liar or a fool. And charlatans. It's very common. People say, "Well, I'm a prophet. I speak to God, and for only $49.99, the two payments of $49.99, I will heal your
yeah,
it's, charlatans."
yeah, it's not good to say the least. I got something else I was gonna add, but I forgot it, which sucks. Does anyone else have anything they want to add?
I do have one last thing
Okay.
to talk about. It's the creation, the Big Bang. I want to talk about that and how
Oh, that's okay.
this this is a science thing. So how they say God created nothing and he turned nothing into something, and how when you look into science, um, I can't remember. It's like the seven, like I forgot what it was. It had to do with some rules of energy and whatnot, and one of them is you can't create nothing you can't create something from nothing, and you can't create energy. You can't.
It can
Yeah,
energy cannot be created nor destroyed, only exchanged.
that is it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And how people would argue against that is that God is omnipotent. He can, just by the force of his will, that he can make it happen. Um, which, in my opinion, is bullshit. Again, sorry for the language. I would say this swearing is not allowed on the Christian Minecraft server, but we've already gone over that. um, as well as there's also, so I was talking with someone about this, going to something called an alpha meeting with my dad. And he said that, okay, if you look at it, there's something that has to create the Big Bang. It's like, okay, and yeah, so there's something has to come from something. Okay, then, but where did God come from? Or did he always just exist? Right there's a fallacy. It
Yeah,
doesn't
see,
make
in the
sense.
spirit of remaining objective and discussing fallacies, the one that's always constantly on my mind is our belief as the cult is, scientific reasoning behind the multiverse theory, as we've touched on in this chapter, and as we will touch on subsequently when we read the other chapters. Multiverse theory stating that it's possible that this isn't the only universe, that there is an infinite amount of universes in which everything has always happened that could have ever happened has happened. So there could be a universe in which, I don't know, you died at stillbirth. Could be a universe in which you're a famous movie star, or where you're an MMA fighter, or you're disabled, or whatever. Everything that has ever happened or could have possibly happened has happened. By that reasoning, is it conceivable that not only is there a universe where the old ones exist, but where the Abrahamic God also exists? And where in
Yeah,
fact he did create the universe in 7 days, and whereby in the same universe Adam and Eve existed, and in the same universe Noah's Ark existed.
yeah,
Because going by
that's a
our
good thing.
scientific belief, then it is entirely conceivable that that is indeed the.
Mm-hmm. Eric, you were trying to say something?
Yeah, like what I said about like that things will have already happened, or have already happened and will happen and stuff. Like that, and everything is pretty much like, I guess, a bit planned out. Is like it it's shown well in the video game, the Call of Cthulhu, where the main protagonist, uh, Edward Pierce, has a dream where basically he storms or he infiltrates the Call of Cthulhu secretly. Then he sees, like, I guess, a ritual performed, and but every face is just completely blank. Then his police friend shows up. The police friend gets noticed by the cultists. Cultists go near him. He shoots. He doesn't shoot them, but he back away because he's pointing his gun at them. Then I guess one of the guys is like already mutated with like tentacle arms and stuff. Goes forward to him, goes to him, and pretty much disembowels him, even though he got shot in the head. Um, and then Edward wakes up, and then I guess like later in the game, like not too late, but like a chapter, 2 chapters later, that actually happens in the game, which is, for me, that was very surprising, to be honest. Um, it did indeed take me by surprise, and I guess that is pretty much the whole gist of the grand oil painting of existence as well.
Um, sorry about the me having to leave there for a second. My father called me. So can you just do like a brief summary of that? I apologize again. I know you're talking about
That's
the game
fine.
Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, Edward Pierce has a dream where um, basically he has a dream where he's infiltrating, I guess, the Call of Cthulhu. His police friend gets spotted. He gets disemboweled, And then later in the game that actually happens. The police guy gets disemboweled, everything happens according to plan, and it took me a bit by surprise, and that it goes a bit like the notions of, I guess, the grand old painting of existence, that everything has already been planned, it will be planned, has already been planned, or has already happened and stuff.
Yeah, okay, I get you
Like,
now.
yeah, like, what's it called? One of the, I guess, tritagonists, or the main antagonist in the game, you could say, Leviathan, is a Starspawn, Cthulhu's second in command in the game, and he spoke to Edward in his dreams, and he's already said like everything that has happened, that will happen already has happened and has already been planned out for you, and that is, I guess, very suitable to our world. I guess maybe I don't know.
Yeah. So about the grand oil painting is that like you're saying it's true. For those who do not know, what the grand oil painting of existence is, um, everything from the very beginning, from one, if you believe in Athathos dream, all the way from the beginning of that until now, until the old ones rise back again, and farther into the eventual death of the universe when Athathos wakes up. Um, all that has been planned out, and we are currently living in a very, very small portion of it. And as a cultist, one of the cultist goals is to perceive and understand this grand oil painting. And so that was what Brother Eric was getting into, was talking about how um, stuff is already planned, as akin to a destiny. Now we all have destinies, and stuff is going all according to plan that the old ones have foretold. Anything else, or one last thing? It's approaching an hour, so.
Mm-hmm. This is a general question. Do you feel
Okay.
having more reason and logic and belief in this belief system is more comforting than going straight to faith and, I guess, being repetitive, saying belief again? Do you
Um,
feel more comfort in logic and reason? Is the best way to put it.
I do definitely feel more comfort in logic and reasoning is something that I can do. Is something that I have that is within my control, and so I feel more comfort in doing that. But again, with the belief aspect of it, that we have very little to no control. So it is comforting to me that I have some control, even, or at least the concept of control, than just, living life as a drone, per se. So I definitely do feel more comfort with the belief system of the cult. Does that answer
Like
your
for
question?
example,
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
sorry to like interrupting a couple times. Sorry about that. Basically, like, for example, in I guess in today's world, we could pretty much take this one quote from H.P. Lovecraft, and apply it to our world and have it be very accurate. The quote I'm referring to is, which is by far my favorite quote by H.P. Lovecraft. We live in a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far. Each of the sciences, straining it in its own direction, have hitherto harmed us little, but some day the piecing together of dissociated reality will open such terrifying vistas of reality that we shall either go mad from the revelation or flee from the deadly light into the peace and darkness of a new dark age. And that fits, I guess, our our reality, our world right now very, very well. Since since even now, physicists and yeah, pretty much physicists and stuff are still finding more and more stuff the about quantum physics and physics in general. For example, they're still finding new stuff, which is still insane still. And it may be true that someday they will find something that is completely, utterly terrifying and utterly madness driving, I guess you could say, that we'll all go mad and we could do nothing about it.
Yes. I think that is a perfect key to end on. With a quote from H.P. Lovecraft. And also, I do agree that is a very, very good quote, especially for modern times. Um, so with that, I thank you everyone for talking. D said there might be a little bit more unpredictableness within the next one that he might not be able to do it. So either it'll be Eric or I if he cannot. Um, is that true, D? Or is it like, do you know for sure, or is it still unpredicted?
Most likely, I'm going to be away Saturday night, but I will let you know. But
Okay.
if I can't do it, then Eric has said that.
Okay, cool. Um, so that is so that's what's gonna be happening next week. Same time. Um, 5 p.m. CST. And again, thank you all for coming. I had a lot of fun. I've learned quite a bit, and as well as I hope you all do. You all did. And for some of you who kind of didn't have that good of understanding, hopefully you have now a better understanding. And that will concludes today's Bible study. Thank you all for
Just
coming.
FYI, I believe next week is going to be held on a Saturday rather than a Friday.
Saturday? Okay, my bad.
I might be mistaken. It might be the week after, but I think it is next week. It's going to be on Saturday.
Okay. So, yeah. Thank you, everyone, and you all are dismissed.
Ja, Cthulhu sagen.
Ia Cthulhu Fatagan, and may he rise.